Hey everyone, welcome back to the live Support Ops Hangout. This is our weekly discussion that helps you deliver a better support experience to your customers. We're live every single Monday, 5:30 p.m. Central, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, and then all those other fun time zones too. Basically, long story short, we're here every Monday, same bat time, same bat channel. Today, Jeff's out, so you don't have his smiling face, but we do have Carolyn. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying some of our video stuff is going kind of crazy, so if you see some of us just drop off randomly or Carolyn just not appear on video for whatever reason, that's just how life goes sometimes. So yeah, Carolyn, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Fantastic. At least you've got a good avatar going on, so we're fine there.
Okay. I'll just try and look like that the whole time so it's realistic.
And then we have the other amazing Chase Livingston from Automatic. How is your Monday going?
Going very well. Glad to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Now, before we dive too far into the show, I will say, if you want to get, so this show is awesome. I'm awesome. Chase Livingston is awesome. If you want to have more awesomeness like us, go over to thedispatch.fm. Check it out. It's a brand new podcast project that I'm doing with him, and my wife's involved with a show of her own, and we've got some new shows that are coming out too. So definitely check that out, thedispatch.fm. For this show today, we're talking about using social media tools, and I hate that phrase, but it's the best phrase I've got to talk about what we're talking about. So basically, when we think about social media tools, you know, you're thinking Twitter, you're thinking Facebook. They're really powerful, but they're kind of this two-edged sword, right? When things go right, it's really fantastic, and customers are letting other people know that you're fantastic on Facebook and on Twitter, and everyone's happy, and there's unicorns and rainbows and all that fun stuff. But if you get it wrong, and just kind of for an example, check out any like major American airline, and look at their Twitter feed and see how they get it horribly, horribly wrong. There's definitely a backlash. So the thing that really surprised me, I was doing some research for this, just getting ready, and the thing that really, really surprised me was that there are over 1 million people looking at Twitter every single week, looking at Twitter about customer service specifically. So it's not like you can just ignore Twitter. You can't ignore it or Facebook or anything like that. You just got to be careful. It's one of those, one bad interaction can wipe out any goodwill that you've built up. You know, the previous 10 tweets that were amazing gets wiped out just because of one really bad interaction. So let's talk about ways that you can make sure to use these kind of social media tools to your advantage and always stay on the good side of that double-edged sword. So we're going to start with Carolyn, because when I think social media support, Carolyn and Buffer are the first place I go to because they get it right every single time pretty much. Also, she's got video now, so there's that. That's
Turned
awesome.
it off and turned it back on. Yay.
See, I love this, because not to bleed over too much from like UserConf last time, but when we were at UserConf, something went wrong, like the slides weren't working, and the entire room basically erupted in. Did you turn it on and off?
That's pretty great.
So yeah, so Carolyn, when it comes to Buffer, what specific social media channels are you guys and gals watching?
Yeah, so you've heard me talk about them before. We use a tool called Spark Central for Twitter, which is our primary social tool. Email is our primary support tool, but Twitter is our primary social. And we also track basically every touch point, because every touch point that we have is someplace that sometimes customers comment and ask questions and share feedback. So we also monitor Facebook and you know, the App Store and the Google Play Store and like everything like that. But Twitter is by far and away our only like real tool that the support team monitors.
So most of those seem kind of like de facto standard, you know, so you need to be watching Twitter and Facebook and that kind of thing. And then I guess there are some people out there using Google Plus or whatever, so you need to watch that too every now and then. But you mentioned the Apple iTunes Store, the App Store, and Google Play. Now, Google Play I get, because you can reply to people that leave reviews there with problems. How do you do that with the App Store? How do you figure out like who's having the problems when they make comments there?
Ooh, I should defer to Andy on this one. I might have to answer that in a follow-up. I'm not sure how he manages it. We do have a Facebook group for people who are early testers for the iPhone app. So he does a lot of communication in there. So he knows a lot of the people who tend to share feedback and stuff. But for the people who are not involved on that end and just comment in the reviews, I'm going to have to follow up with you on that. I'm not sure how he does that.
Stumped Carolyn. My goal is complete. We can all go home.
Sorry, I don't
know. Yeah, having that kind of, you're talking about that beta group on a social media kind of channel is really great. We did the same thing when we released the Basecamp for Android app. We had a Basecamp beta, Google Plus, a perfect time to use Google Plus communities, and got a lot of good, it was one of those, maybe like half our team used some kind of Android device, so we could use Basecamp there, but there's so many different Android devices out there, all running so many different OSs and that kind of OS versions and that kind of thing. Having some kind of group that you can always go back to as beta testers really helps out there. Chase Livingston, you and I talked about this a little bit beforehand, about how social media really isn't that huge with Automatic and with WordPress. You kind of just direct back toward the forums and the email and the live chat, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We have a lot of folks who tweet us, and we have lots of different Twitter accounts for all the different products that Automatic kind of has under its umbrella, and so it's kind of tough to try to keep up with responding to everybody on all those various accounts, just because it would really flood the account with nothing but replies. We get so many requests and that kind of thing, so we really just try to be clear and point people to our usual methods of support, just so we don't people don't expect support via social networks when that's not something that we have the resources or the time to dedicate to that to make it as good as or up to par with our other methods of support.
Yeah, so everyone, all of our viewers, remember there are people like Buffer and Basecamp who have an active Twitter presence that are supporting customers there. WordPress supports is on 23% of the web, and they kind of default back to live chat and email. So don't think that when we talk about you absolutely have to be on Twitter, that it's necessarily for your niche. You've got to find your niche and where your customers are. My wife is a family photographer. A lot of her requests and things come in over Facebook because that's where families tend to be. That's where moms tend to be, and that kind of thing. So everything that we talk about, just remember, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's, figure out what your niche is. Figure out what your customers are expecting. So yeah, Chase Livingston, so let me back up. Have you ever used Twitter to get support from another company?
Yeah, I've definitely used it to get support. Not necessarily a major support interaction, but just like a bug I found or a feature request or something like that. I'll definitely, if I know and can tell that that product or company is active on Twitter, I'll start there, and hopefully they'll at least direct me to the right place, or respond back with a yes or no or something like that, via Twitter. So yeah, it's definitely something I use on a regular basis.
So when you reach out to a company like that, and we'll just stick with Twitter for instance because it's a good kind of general thing.
Yeah.
How quick of a reply time are you expecting? Is it email where it could take up to a business day, or does Twitter kind of have this shorter time frame, shorter response rate?
I kind of feel like with Twitter, people probably, and myself included, probably expect a little bit of a shorter window, just because Twitter's so instant and there's tools to manage it quickly and things like that. So I kind of expect at least within a few hours. But then again, there's not really a precedent, I don't think, that's been set yet, because it's such a new tool compared to email support and that kind of thing. So I'm not sure that as an industry we've really set that precedent as to how quickly we should respond via Twitter.
What do you think, Carolyn? Is it one of those where you agree? Should if a customer emails in and another customer sends a tweet, should the tweet get a faster reply from your hero team?
Ooh.
See, I am throwing out some great questions today. I am ready for this one.
That is a great question. And the reason I say ooh is because I don't think we've totally nailed this. So I know that the way Wistia does it is that they don't, if you email and you've been waiting and then you tweet, they'll say, we're going to get back to your email. Whereas we tend to sort of like I've heard Jeff say the phrase "cut the line" before, and we totally do that, which I know isn't great. But yeah, we do tend to have faster reply times on Twitter, and in fact, we just started monitoring those, which is just because it wasn't really available in our tool. So we had our happiness engineer built it. But yeah, I mean, I think in an ideal world, you get a response back from Twitter within minutes that says either here's the answer or I'm looking into it. We are by no means living in that ideal world, but that's our goal. Whereas like with email, we think you should get an email back within, ideally an hour, at the very most 6 hours. 6 hours is a really long time on Twitter. So yeah, I think ideally it is a faster, especially because of the nature of the conversation. We tend to treat Twitter more like live chat, like it's more of a quick back and forth conversation as opposed to here's one question and I'm going to solve it with my one reply.
Yeah, that's one of those. I think the Twitter and live chat analogy is really good there because Twitter, you're limited to 140 characters unless you're MailChimp with their crazy long answer thing that they do that works for them. So 140 characters basically. That requires really short answers, and I mean really short questions and really short answers. So if somebody says, "Hey, can you do X inside your app?" You say yes or no, and if it's a yes, well, here's the link to how to do it. So a lot quicker, a lot faster. Carolyn, you keep mentioning tools that Buffer is using for all this stuff. So what's kind of the tools that you have used and are using to help keep up with all the Facebook and Twitter and everything else comments coming your way?
We didn't find tools to be particularly useful for Facebook, partially because we just don't have that much volume, and partially because it's a little bit hard to get that integration exactly right. So Spark Central does also work for Facebook, but we find it easier to just use facebook.com. Partially because sometimes we prefer to answer as Buffer, and sometimes we actually prefer to answer as ourselves. So it kind of depends there. But the main tool we use for Twitter is Spark Central. We've used others in the past. The main reason that we've loved this one so much is because great search criteria, but also it treats it like an inbox. So every single thing every single tweet that matches the search criteria or just has your handle in it comes in, and then you can either choose to respond to it or not, but you archive it either way. And so you're trying to get to inbox 0, same as an inbox, whereas with some of the other tools, you kind of have to remember where you left off in the thread, like, did I answer this one or did I not? And I think the concept of getting towards 0 is really valuable there as well. So that's been the tool that we've stuck with.
Yeah, and Spark Central just hired on Sarah Carter as their kind of customer support. I don't remember if she has like an actual title.
I think she's
customer success kind of person. Yeah. Regardless, she's awesome. And if you do use Spark Central, then and you run into questions, then I think she's going to give you a really great support experience. So yeah, Chase Lemonster, we've got to give you a couple of hardball questions too, so we don't leave you out and just like Carolyn have all the fun. So I know that live chat is kind of your niche that you've got going on with Automatic, but when it comes to like Twitter, Facebook, that kind of thing, if you were running that for the Automatic team, do you think that you should answer every single mention, every single complaint, every single comment that happens through those social channels, or is it okay to answer some and leave others? Like, where do you think you would fall at for that?
I think a lot of the mentions that, at least I feel like, that would come in for us may not need an answer necessarily, just because, if it's a complaint and if it's a valid complaint, something that we don't do or can't do or aren't going to fix, everybody has those kinds of things. It may not be necessary to reply and say that's right, that's a valid complaint. Thanks. That's kind of a pointless reply and a waste
Thumbs up! You got it right. That's a bug.
Waste of our time and the user's time. So
challenge cake.
Yeah.
I knew that was going to come, so go ahead. Finish out the thought.
Those are probably not worth replying to. But, I mean, if it's a question like we mentioned earlier, can I do X, or does your product have the ability to do Y? Those are definitely ones that I think you should try to get to everyone that that comes in if you're gonna provide that, if you're gonna provide that support and you're gonna tell users you're gonna provide that support. But otherwise, I think like I mentioned, there are some that go unanswered. But I feel like if you're going to tell users you provide it, then you should definitely do your best to get to everything.
So with the challenge cake, over to Carolyn, and I knew this was going to happen, so I picked this specific question. I knew it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to be predictable.
I kind of thought it was going to come from Jeff, and we're going to have a nice Jeff Carolyn thing, but it's cool. We've got a nice Chase Carolyn thing going on. Even better, even better. Sorry, challenge cake.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't actually disagree with the concept of that the fact that you're not actually adding very much there, and we do sometimes, we'll send an email to somebody and they'll complain about the response that they got on Twitter, which they already know the answer. So yeah, I mean, I agree that you're not really adding much, but we do try to respond to those, partially just to sort of acknowledge it, and also because the other people who are following both of you or anybody who's interested in that conversation might not know the answer or might have not had the previous experience. So, I mean, yeah, it's a simple challenge cake. It's just a little challenge cupcake. We do try to respond to all of those because we think it adds some value.
Cool.
Yeah, that's one of those. I'm kind of a mix. There are certainly, and talking about Twitter with Basecamp, for whatever reason, Basecamp is kind of popular about Basecamp is a music group too, plus anybody climbing any kind of mountain you see Basecamp mentioned. So obviously you weed those out. Don't need to worry about those. Any kind of question directly at us, so your at mentioned, then yeah, you should probably go ahead and reply to those. Some stuff that's in passing, it might be 50-50 depending on if we're busy that day. If somebody says, gee, I wish Basecamp had Gantt charts. Basecamp's never going to have Gantt charts. So if it's particularly busy that day, it might just kind of get skipped over. So it's kind of, I don't know. Again, find your niche, right? I mean, what works for Buffer won't work for Automatic, won't work for Basecamp. And Jeff is sitting at home watching this and laughing at all of us saying we got it all completely wrong. So
yeah, I should mention, we don't respond to every single at mention. If somebody mentions us and complains about something or gripes about something and or at replies to us directly, we'll always respond to those. But yeah, we get a lot of people who say here's a blog post by Buffer, and we don't respond to every single one of those by any means.
Plus, you've got all those guys that are talking about how they're going to get buff at the gym, so that pops up in your random searches.
My girlfriend's buffer than me. I have to go to the gym. That's my favorite one. We get at least one of those every 6 months.
That one guy that sent that tweet out is watching this and going to be like, I'm never going to watch their show again. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. So, yeah, kind of last question. Twitter and Facebook, tend to be, and while I'm not crazy about the illusion that Richard from over at Userverse has, he says that Twitter is kind of like the Judge Judy of the internet, right? So that's where people go. Yeah, that's where people go to complain, right? And it's very public and it's a show. That's the big thing. Somebody's going to publicly complain, and it's going to be a big show. We're starting drama to have drama for drama's sake. I don't 100% agree with that. I think Twitter is almost one of those places where if you're stuck in an email queue for days on end, if you're it can't get through the phone tree, sometimes you can short circuit that and go through Twitter. Comcast would be a good example of this. They've got Comcast Cares, which kind of short circuits that process. So I think it's really good for that kind of thing. But when you talk about Twitter for big companies, Comcast, NBC, NBC canceled community the other day, so I'm sure they got lots and lots of angry tweets and couldn't respond to all of them. But NBC, Comcast, American Air, any airline that you can think of, it's a lot of complaints. It's a lot of you lost my luggage, or my flight's delayed, or you don't carry this show, or you suck, and that kind of stuff. So how do you keep, and Carolyn, we'll start with you on this one, how do you keep the Buffer stream from being nothing but complaints about Buffer? Not that Buffer is ever in this situation because everyone loves you, but if Buffer was in that situation.
Oh, I'll just
Tips
gloss
for
over that one and
breaking that up.
let that one be true. So the difference I think between you lost my luggage and my flight's delayed and I can't log in is that I can do something about that tweet right at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the companies that I think you're describing, the really big companies that have to handle sort of the deluge of complaints, are probably sometimes in a situation to not do anything about that. Web apps are different. You know, you can pull up anybody's account immediately and see what's going on. So, yeah, we do our fair share of apologizing because we have bugs pretty regularly and change stuff and confuse people and all that kind of stuff. So we do, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how we keep from turning our entire thread into an apology, but we're lucky to get nice tweets that we have to reply to as well. But yeah, I think the main difference is that we can usually do something about it right away, which I guess is a bigger discussion about making sure that your support team is empowered to make decisions on the spot and not have to bottleneck through a manager. But kind of on the immediate sense, yeah, it's just a different situation because we are able to help right away. So it's a little bit easier for us to make people happy on Twitter.
You say that, but there was a time, and I was looking through the Basecamp @mention reply feed today. It's not quite as bad, but there have been days where I will go through the Basecamp replies, and it's nothing but, nope, sorry about that, or I'm sorry, or we can't do that, and that kind of thing. And I think for us it was a lot of making sure that you reply to tweets that might not necessarily, like, immediately need a reply. So I mean, somebody says like, "Hey, loving Basecamp today. It makes my life more organized." You could just send a thanks their way, just to kind of break up the big monotony of sorry. And there was one I remember. It was, I guess, about a year ago or so. But somebody had went through and wrote an algorithm to look at the percentage of our tweets that contain the word no or sorry. Because they were trying to figure out like how often we said no to feature requests and that kind of thing, and it was something crazy like 70 or 80% of the tweets that we sent out. So we've gotten better about that, you know, going through and making sure that you're not using the same wording over and over. I think especially like when things go wrong, like when lots of flights get delayed or your app goes down or anything like that. It's almost like copy and paste the same reply to everybody, and then you look in the feed and it's nothing but like this robotic feel to it. So making sure to like break that up, that kind of thing. Yeah, I would ask Chase Livingston's advice on this, but he'd probably be like, "Hey, we do live chat."
Pretty much.
Yeah. See, that's just how it is some days. Yes, that's all the big questions I had about how to do social media and that kind of thing. Was there any last minute like thoughts or brilliant ideas either of you wanted to throw in?
I would love to have a separate show on sorry.
On sorry.
Jeff would, in fact, at UserConf, Jeff told me that I wish I could remember his exact phrasing. He basically said that I say sorry all the time. And then, of course, I proceeded to prove him right over the next course of lunch by saying it like 12 times. But I would love to discuss that because there was two very, very opposite thoughts on that. And one is it's appropriate to apologize over social media because you're apologizing on behalf of the company.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was you shouldn't apologize because you specifically didn't do anything wrong and you're the one answering the tweet. So I'm sorry becomes meaningless. And I would love to hear both of y'all's response on that either now or in a separate show.
I kind of feel like we have to have Jeff on the show for that one.
Okay. I would like to hear what he has to say for that as well.
That's one of those. I'm just a sneak peek here. I'm kind of the same way, right? So it's if all you're doing, you know, if somebody says, "Hey, this is broken," it's fine to start with like, "I'm sorry," that kind of thing. If somebody has just, you know, how do you do this inside of your app, and you start with, "I'm sorry, it wasn't more clear," that's kind of like it's not needed, especially when you're only working with like 140 characters. So yeah, we'll do a whole show on it. I'm making a note right now.
Okay, thanks.
That literally says, show on Sorry.
Thank you.
And I just suspect that we'll know what that means when we get there.
We should try and get Shervin from Get Drumbeat on because he had passionate thoughts about that.
I love that. Passionate thoughts.
He was sitting next to me. We didn't agree.
Oh, so that wraps up this topic for this week, which brings us to the favorite part of the week. It's this week's shoutouts, and 100% kudos to Chase Livingston for standing in on the drum, the little drum thing. Drum roll, that's the word I'm looking for.
Thank you.
He was right there on it. Like, it was absolutely perfect. But yeah, for anybody that hasn't watched this show or the previous 42 episodes, shout-outs are things that are, that we're so excited about this week that we want to shout them out from the rooftops, from the mountaintops. Basically, these are things that we just have to tell you about because they're awesome. And it can be anything. It could be books or movies or apps or that one little thing inside Sangza that Carolyn was so excited about. That one little thing. So yeah, Chase Livingston, what are you shouting out this week?
So you kind of mentioned it a little bit at the top of the show, but Chase and I are working on a new podcast network, and specifically I wanted to shout out Made with WP, which is the podcast that he and I are both doing, kind of talking about WordPress, some news, and then also interviewing some great WordPress professionals who are doing some awesome things to see how they got their start in WordPress and what they're doing and what they're using now to get that done. So if you haven't checked it out, it's thedispatch.fm, and you can find links to all the shows and things like that from there.
Seriously, you think this show is awesome with 2 chases? Imagine another show with 2 chases.
Yeah.
It's something, I'll put it that. Carolyn, what are you shouting out this week?
Cool. So I want to cheat and shout out 2 things, and I want to really cheat and shout out 2 things that Buffer people have built. But I think it's actually the first one is actually relevant to this show. It's our
shameless plugs.
Shameless plug. It's a happiness dashboard that we just built and made public. I say we, Colin, and it's basically the state of support for us. So it says, how we're doing in terms of speed and volume and all that. And so you can actually check and see how we're doing on Twitter.
Where can I find this at?
happiness.bufferapp.com.
I should have known it would be that simple. Sorry, I just wanted to pull it up while we're talking about this.
Yeah, pull it up. But the data's only right from May on, so if you look back, it won't be true. But you can look at May, and next month, the last month link will be right. And the other thing I want to shout out, it's not built yet, but it's so fun. It's sort of in beta right now, but it's Tinder for content. And our team did it as sort of like this funny side project that wasn't really real. And it's just this idea that our 5 suggestions that we have every day in Buffer would just come up, and you can swipe right or left, and left means no and right means put it in your buffer. And it was kind of a joke, and then suddenly it became real, and it's in beta right now. And I think it's really amazing and a testament to this concept of we spend 50% of our time on our core stuff and 30% of our time improving, and expanding, and then 20% on crazy ideas, which our engineering team just implemented. So, sorry, this is a really long shout out, but I was just really proud of them and really excited about that, and hopefully that'll launch soon.
Yeah, I saw a picture of it from Leo, I think. Any specific link we could direct people to for that one?
Not yet, but
Go find that random tweet from Leo that has a picture in it.
Yeah, sorry. As soon as it's available, I'll definitely I'll add it to your notes. But, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I like the happiness.bufferapp.com, and particularly the fact that when I click on happiness index, it just tells me that you're feeling, and it has a big smiley face. The guy's
that's not really built yet. It doesn't mean anything.
That's awesome.
This is a work in progress. But we wanted to share it and be held accountable for it. So.
Look at that. Your response times are looking awesome for the day.
Thanks. It depends on the day.
But that's awesome. I love, I love that Buffer's just kind of making all this stuff public, and especially, you guys released your your money board, for lack of a better word, the other day. I'll put a link in the show notes to it. But it's like, here's everything that's happening as far as money goes. Like, here's how many refunds you're doing. Here's how many people are upgrading. Here's who canceled. Like, all this stuff. Here it is, with fake names, of course, to protect everybody's privacy and that kind of thing. But like the numbers are real, which was really cool. I like it. I like it a lot. Very cool. Oh wait, for me, my shout out. So I went to Auburn this weekend. I needed something to read, basically, in some downtime, and completely forgot my Kindle. Just completely forgot it. So I picked up a book called Fluke by Christopher Moore. Christopher Moore does these crazy books about like Jesus' best friend Biff, who hung out with him and tells the story of Jesus from Biff's point of view. And he does kind of a play on King Lear, but it's told from the perspective of the court jester, which was really fun. So this book, Fluke, is all about this whaling team that goes out and they're trying to figure out why humpback whales sing. And then the guy gets eaten by a whale, and then come to find out there's like this whole whale underworld, and I won't spoil any of the surprises or things like that. But I think it's a really fun book. A lot of times, like when I'm reading books, it tends to be like work stuff or support stuff or customer stuff or basically nonfiction stuff. Basically, I have a list of what Buffer's reading, and I read that.
We have a new Pinterest board about that.
You do have a Pinterest board, which I subscribe to. But yeah, I needed something that was kind of just like, let's not really think very hard about this book that I want to read. So, Fluke by Christopher Moore is really great. I would encourage you to check it out if you like weird things like I do. So that's it. We'll put this episode in the books. Show notes will be up at supportops.co shortly. And yeah, that's it. No long drawn out thing here. Oh, Jeff, if you're watching, new comic book mug. Yep, that's the Hulk right there. Also, Jeff, if you're watching or listening to this, look in the show notes. No, we don't miss him. Look in the show notes from last week, and you'll see proof that Captain America has wings on his helmet. And we miss you. Carolyn misses you. That kind of thing. Yeah, so that's it. It's in the books. We'll see you again next time, and until we see you, have an awesome week.